introduce you to a book that's more than 20 years in making. Can everybody hear me? I can't hear myself.
Let's turn it up.
Turn it up. Can't turn it up.
That's for this.
Okay, that's for this. Okay. Anyway, as David said, George B. was a radio personality. And the way I got to know George B., I heard him on the radio some, but he came to Union, I teach at Union, and he came to work on his doctorate, and I became his dissertation chair. So that's how I got to know George B. And he told me his idea for the book, because this is his brainchild. And so a lot of it came from his radio show, and he gave church meetings. Well, he made me mad one day on the show, and I quit listening to him. And so when it was in the afternoon, and when he would come on, I just changed to another station. And let me tell you what he did to make me mad. This was in the early days of the Bemis Historical Society. And when he would give community news, he would talk about the Bemis Historical Society. And that made me mad. And as he says, I hold a grudge. And I do. But anyway, he introduced me to his idea about writing a book about No Hope Baptist Church and Brother Jacob T. Rastus. And at that time, as he talked about it, I saw Brother Jacob T. Rastus as kind of a comic figure, and he'd do things in his church and they would go wrong, and that's just the way I saw him. But over time, I changed, and I changed my mind about Brother Jacob T. Rastus. And in about 2004, I think, he'd asked me if I wanted to write some stories for him. And so I sat down one day, Union at work, on my laptop and wrote a story entitled The Funeral. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But anyway, I saved it on the laptop. It's the only place I saved it. That's a big mistake to save it in one place. Well, the laptop died. And so then, a little over a year ago, I guess, we started getting really serious about the book. I didn't have it, and I knew I couldn't recreate that story. And so, I had discarded the laptop. And so George somehow was able to find my story. And so, anyway, we went from there, and I added 2 more to the book. So, I'm going to let George introduce you to No Hope Church and to Brother Jacob T. Rastus, and kind of walk you through the book and share some things, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make a Bemis connection.
David, you got the clicker? Did you have a clicker? You don't have to have one.
It's up there.
Oh, is it there? Which one, Hunt's for? Okay. Anybody know who that is?
Yeah.
It is Ken Newman. I was looking at Facebook, and he got into AI just like the world is getting into AI. And he had an AI picture of himself in his classroom, and I looked at it, and I hollered at everybody in the house, and I said, "Come here and look. This is Brother Rastus." Then I asked him if he would agree to be that model, and he said yes. And so he's throughout the whole book. Now, I want to introduce, this is where all in our younger days here. On the front row, there's Ken. Now Ken was the editor of the book. I tried, believe me, I tried to get him to write half of it, because I wanted to do as little as possible. He wrote 3 stories, and they're good. And he identified with the characters because we both grew up in rural, fundamental, country churches. How many of y'all belong to one now? How many of you belonged to one when you were a kid, a rural country church? How many of you ever seen one? Okay. What? That's going on its own. That's okay. That's okay. These are just pictures, illustrations of some of the. Okay. Now it will advance as I want. The chapters were captured by the illustrator, and that's Teresa. Raise your hand. Would you like to say a few words, Teresa? She was real talkative until the Southern Baptists had their convention last week. And she and so many other women are just scared to say anything in any building that looks like it might be a church. No, she did a great job. And she's got giveaways up here because she runs a design shop in Milan, Terry Lynn's design basket case. And if you want a bookmark or a car coaster or a keychain, you can have everything except the tote bag. Anyway, thank you, Teresa. Bemis, I live, if you put a pin in the map in Madison County, halfway between Bemis and Westover. I live in an abandoned church building, right there in between the two. I'm familiar with Bemis because every kid in Madison County came to the Bemis skating rink, right? And let me tell you, the first love I ever had was during, it's not funny. Well, it's heartfelt for me. The first love I ever had was at the Bemis skating rink during the Blue Light Special. Joe and I were talking about the Blue Light Special. Y'all know about that? Boy would grab a girl's hand and skate around a little bit. Yeah. And then I would go to the corner, and I just fell for this girl. I'll just be honest with you. Fell for her hard. So I knew she'd be there the next week.
George, it's about to get into my slides. Don't let it get into my slides.
Oh. Okay. Thank you, Andy. He's been correcting me ever since I worked. He was my professor. I went into the corner and I said, I wrote a poem for you. Her name was Sally. She was bow-legged, couldn't skate very well, but she was sweet. And you want to hear the poem I wrote for her? I ran my fingers through her hair, and then I stopped to linger. And just before I thought we'd kiss, a cootie bit my finger. That's not funny. Okay. All right, enough of that. The No Hope Baptist Church is a fictional church in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. But it has great history in this fictional book. And there's real things that happened in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. Lawrenceburg, not unlike a rural city anywhere in Tennessee. And Davy Crockett was famous there. The Southern Gospel School of Music, James D. Vaughn, who was the father of quartet gospel music, is based in Lawrenceburg. The Murray Bicycle Plant was based in Lawrenceburg. And they shipped bicycles all over the world. You buy them at Montgomery Ward and everywhere else. So Lawrenceburg, a real place, and a lot of the things in the book are based on real. But there's some things in the book that stretch the imagination, I'll be honest with you. That's why you get to call it historic fiction. And there's a good bit of fiction in there, all about Brother Jacob T. Rastus and the No Hope Baptist Church. This was the movie theater in Lawrenceburg. Jacob T. Rastus, when he was a teenager, he had made friends with two Amish boys. And they had a great friendship until he took them to the movie theater to see Some Like It Hot starring Marilyn Monroe. And that was in 1969. That was not the thing for the Amish boys to do, to go to movies. And they were banned. They couldn't be friends anymore for a long time. You want to read about that, the whole story's in the book. I'll do a couple more here. These are the ladies of the No Hope Baptist Church. They want the women's restroom renovated expanded. They weren't going to take no for an answer, and they wanted the deacons to name it the Ladies' Lounge. Almost caused the church split until they appointed as a committee chair Brother Rastus' wife, Mrs. Rastus. You remember Mrs.? Y'all ever say Mrs. instead of Mrs.? Well, that's how they call it. Ken will say something else about the language and the mess-ups on language in the book. But they had all, there's one of the evangelists that came to know Hope, Brother Ernest Cash. And he did a 2-week revival. Do y'all remember those? And he'd go to a different congregant's house every night before the service. And you know what they had to eat? You know what the main thing was? Fried chicken. I could tell you a poem about that, but I won't. He was famous for his baby dedications. He was the only pastor known in the South who could do baby dedications, and the baby never coughed, spit up, cause a ruckus. They were calm in his arms. And so hundreds of people from all over, well, can I stop it? You know, oh, we don't want to do that. Can you stop it? Okay. Davis, he's the best tech director I've worked with on this third book signing. The only, well, yeah, you're the only one. So, I forgot where I was in that story, but you saw a picture of a baptistry there. It was the deacon's idea that when they built a new baptistry, it should be down to the floor glass. They called it the panoramic baptistry. Because with the panoramic baptistry, you could see the whole body of the baptizee going down into the water, representing death, burial, and resurrection. Oh my! They didn't plan for seeing the whole body in the panoramic baptistry. Soon they had to get some opaque robes to continue with that. There's a lot of funny things that happen in church along the way, especially the rural church. And now is it going to stay there, David? Okay, thank you. And the 30th anniversary of No Hope, they had dinner on the ground. Any of you ever been to a dinner on the ground? And, okay. They don't pay you, do they, David? Actually, I was excited to meet David because David said he actually listened to my radio show years ago. And I knew there was one person that listened to it, and I met him when I came in tonight, and I appreciate it. So, in any event, at the 30th anniversary, they would have a gospel quartet because Lawrenceburg was famous for them. And in that gospel quartet, they sang a song called Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Y'all know that one? Sing it. Just a closer walk with Thee, grant me, Jesus, if I please. But the quartet, when they got through, did something they shouldn't have done at the No Hope Baptist Church. They said, you know, somebody stole that song from us. It was a country music star named Little Jimmy Dickens. And he copied the chord structure, and he copied the melody, and he copied everything but the words. And here's what he did to that song, and the quartet started singing. Just a bowl of butter beans. Pass the cornbread if you please. I don't want no turnip greens. Just a bowl of butter beans. Y'all heard that before? You ain't heard this verse. See that lady over there with the curlers in her hair. She's not pregnant as she seems. She's just full of butter beans. I'm going to turn it over to you, Ken. But the book has been fun. I appreciate it. Now, Ken invited me. So Anita, you don't have to take the blame for it. Dave doesn't have to take the blame for it. Joel doesn't have to take the blame for it. But it's an honor to be here finally in this building because I have great memories of Bemis. And I'm kind of your neighbor.
I'm going to try to find my slides.
Well, good luck.
It was George's fault. It wasn't working right. This is the Ministerial Association of Lawrenceburg, lame. This one's really well, now I messed up now. This one is hilarious. This is one of those laugh out loud because there was a rumor that Hooters was coming to Lawrenceburg. So Brother Rastus and the Pentecostal preacher, and they went to, was it Murfreesboro? To check it out. So the Pentecostal preacher went in disguise. And the description of his disguise is hilarious. George may want to say some more about some of these a little bit. All right, most books end with the end. This is our the end. Okay. Now, let me talk about my journey to know hope. And I want to make a Bemis connection here that has nothing to do with the book, really, except how it helped me come up with characters. Heron Grove Baptist Church. Who remembers Heron Grove Baptist Church and where it was? I can still see it. And there was a sweet lady that I loved, Alice Williams Irvin. And I was just a little kid, and she invited me to go to church with her in Heron Grove. She took me to church. I was maybe 5 years old. And the only thing I remember about church was we didn't sit in the pews, but on the side there were chairs, tall, high-back chairs, and the women of the church had made what looked like a shirt for them, and it hung over the back of it. And I remember being fascinated by those shirts on the chair backs. You remember, now back in the Victorian age, you know, they covered up chair legs because they were legs, they were limbs, and that was embarrassing. And I guess that's where that came from. But anyway, I loved Alice because she took an interest in me. And then my grandmother and I would go to the Bemis Pentecostal Church. Brother Greer was the pastor, and we would always go to revivals. And I remember all the musical instruments they had, and one that I remembered was Wilma Cowell. Paul Cowell was in my class at school. And Miss Wilma, I think, cooked at Bemis Elementary School, and she played the xylophone, and that just fascinated me. And at one point in my life, my goal was to become a Pentecostal preacher. And then there were the older women. I never remember this happening to a man, but they would get the Holy Ghost. And they would just do all kinds of things when they got the Holy Ghost. And that just fascinated me. So these are things that shape you and you remember. And then I found out they kind of come out in your writing a little bit. And then I went to Bemis Chapel Baptist Church. Carolyn, you went to Bemis Chapel. Are you in that picture? That's a Sunday school class. I'm a little bit older than you. Not much. You may be in it. Okay, now I'm in it, and you know, being a kid, I wrote my initials on my face. So there I am. Now that is a motley crew. And this was Christmas, and we're holding our little Christmas stocking that was our Christmas gift from the Sunday school teachers. And those two Sunday school teachers were Miss Blunt and Miss Nesbitt. And again, they're just people who poured into your life, because who would want to teach that bunch right there in Sunday school? And we were called the card class because we didn't have a Sunday school book. It was a card with a picture on the front, a biblical picture, and then a story on the back. So that's just one of those things I remember. Then Melissa's Baptist Church, and that's where I spent most of my childhood until I married and moved away. And this was when the new building was built, the bigger one, they put the bulletin, and my mother kept this on her coffee table. She had a glass top, and this stayed on her coffee table. And one of my characters is you saw that group of women outside, the deacons' meeting, and I could visualize those women in church and everything as I wrote my stories. And one of my characters is named Orabelle, because Orabelle Raines was a member of Inglewood, and she was a beautiful lady, and I just was fascinated by her name. And so that's a name that just stuck with me. So Orabelle became one of our characters. And by the way, George and I visited Lawrenceburg, and we drove through cemeteries and looked at names on the tombstones to kind of get a feel for the town. And we walked downtown and went in businesses and went to the James D. Bond Museum and everything. So we did a lot of research. And then, this is my grandmother and me at the Bemis Golden Anniversary. Now, this really dates me. Now, the reason I want to show this is I want to show you my grandmother. You see the lady with the hat and the collar and the dress? And then there's me. And one of my stories is about Miss Flora and Miss Flora Steen, who are sisters. Miss Flora is the old maid, and she's moved in with her sister after her sister's husband died. And they don't have a lot of money like some of the other ladies in the church. But Miss Flora wants to appear that, she's more well off than she really is. And so when she goes to the WMU meeting, she'd love to have a new dress, but she can't afford a new dress, so she goes out and buys a new scarf. And that'll look like her, she has a new dress, That'll put all the attention on it instead of a dress. Well, my grandmother wore a hat for most occasions, and we would go to 2 homecomings or decoration days a year up in Henderson County. And my grandmother wanted her relatives that she only saw once a year to think she was doing well. So she couldn't buy a new hat, but she could put a new flower on it. So you see her hat is surrounded by flowers. And so evidently she did that for Bemis Day too, so the people in Bemis would think she was doing real well. But anyway, these are things that just come out when you write. You never know who's going to show up. And this is just some examples of that. The chapter that I wrote on the funeral, my wife worked at the blood center, and one of her employees' husband was killed in some sort of accident. And we went to the visitation at Lawrence Sorensen Funeral Home, and he was a biker. And we didn't go in and just look at him, but standing outside the door, I could see his hand raised up out of the casket, and he had a black glove on. Now, being me, I wanted to go look in there and check it all out, but my wife is not like me, and she wouldn't go. So I just had to look on. And so when I started the story about the funeral, it was about a biker. And so, anyway, that's how that came. Well, the funeral home, I've always been really interested in funeral homes, and one of the other things that I probably should have done was become a funeral director. But anyway, and Jimmy Lawrence, you remember Jimmy Lawrence? He was wonderful and a character. And so my character, the funeral director, is based on Jimmy Lawrence, because he told me the story one time that when he was about 15, he started working for Lanier Funeral Home and helping them out. And so my character in the book is Billy McMaynard, who started helping out at the funeral home when he was a little kid, and he would go and the lady, they lived upstairs, the funeral director and his wife, and she would give him cookies and everything. And so then he ended up inheriting the funeral home. And so he's very instrumental in the funeral chapter, and his funeral is like her and everything. And the stories, even though they have a lot of humor in them, they end on a serious note. And that's what surprised me as I continued reading and writing. And as the editor, I read it, who knows how many times. And every time I read it, I saw something I'd not seen before. And I thought, where did that come from? Even my stories, I would see something and I'd say, where did that come from? I don't remember doing that. And that's just the way writing is. Now, as the editor, I feel I need to make a disclaimer. Because when people read this, they're going to find grammatical errors. Most of them are intentional, because these are just real people. And most of us make grammatical errors as we talk. That's just conversation. And so we wanted them to be folksy. One of our focus readers wanted to change some things. And when George and I talked about it, I said, if we make those changes, it's going to lose that folksiness that we want in the story, because that's what we want it to be. And I have no clue if I have another slide, so we'll see. No, I don't. Anyway, now George, have you thought of anything else you want to say about any of your chapters? Talk just briefly about Orange Crush in the Cemetery.
Yes, sir. He was my professor. I would have never finished that dissertation if it hadn't been for him. So, Orange Crush in the Cemetery is based on an absolute true story that happened to me. I told you I live in an abandoned church house. I've got 7.5 acres of woods, the church building, the church in the woods, and the cemetery. I own all of those. And this story culminates, a very dear friend of mine is buried, that I met on that road we live on. He's buried in that cemetery. Guess what his favorite drink was? Orange Crush. You got to read the rest of the chapter to put it all together. That chapter and the last chapter might make me cry. Made me cry, and I knew what was coming. Made Ken cry, but he's an old softy anyway. Teresa, did it make you cry? Yeah. So if you don't want to cry, don't read the last chapter and don't read the Orange Crush in the Cemetery chapter. The rest of them have some pretty good belly laughs in there. And as Ken said, there's a moral. Book of Proverbs is wonderful. And one of my favorite verses talks about laughter is a good medicine. And it is. And so I don't apologize, and I don't think Ken apologizes for having fun with things that happen that are humorous in the church house growing up. And there's a lot of those in here. And if you want to get a book, you can get one from us. We're senior citizens on a fixed income. You ever heard that before?
The books are $20, and we will sign them. And I failed to mention, I meant to say this earlier, Teresa and I are both Southside graduates. George is JCM. And we're all three Union graduates. Different centuries, but anyway. We're all graduates. And they let us come yesterday to have a book signing with Union, so we had fun doing that since we were all three Union graduates. So thank you for letting us introduce you to No Hope Baptist Church. And you'll have to find out, and if you look at the cover of the book, you'll see at the bottom a beer bottle, and you'll see a pair of broken glasses. And that helps to explain the name of the church.
You'll be drunk on the sign
figure that out.
We tried to get the sign ready for the first service. And I did have something else I wanted to say. I wanted to say something about Teresa. Because she does all these designs, And she did hybrid. By hybrid, I mean part AI and part original art. That's why it looks like Kenneth Newman and not something from the AI stratosphere. But she has a booth in Milan and Rachel's attic. And I saw some of her stuff on Facebook and realized I went to school. We were music majors at Union University and had one class together, class piano. And I went to the first class and went to no more. She went to the first class and she went to all of them because the teacher called us both out after that class. And they said to me, I was playing keyboard in a rock and roll band, so I had some fundamentals down. She said, George, you know the fundamentals that we're going to cover. Every music major has to take class piano and have basic understanding. You don't have to come anymore if you don't want to. You can be creative for the class. And I said, thank you. She called Teresa out. Didn't she? And she said, Teresa, I'm glad to have you in class. Cut your fingernails.
Actually, it was, I have red fingernails. She's like, look at these.
Teresa really does, on my website, georgeb.com, I'll get another plug in. There's a section on her designs, and I just going to brag on it because she presented me with this pair of shoes. I collect Converse high top All-Stars, and I've worn them since elementary school. They're the enduring shoe. And she has put Brother Rastus, Orange Crush in the Cemetery, the ticket stub from Some Like It Hot, the church house, the broken bottle and broken glasses. She has illustrated all those on my shoes. And I'm styling and profiling. So she left some things up here. They're free. One of them is a coaster, and it says, official member, No Hope Church. Get one of those for your car, put your drink in. And there's keychain, bookmark, help yourself. Those are all free. Okay? She did good.